What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Behind Show. Today is July 29th, 2021. This video, I'm continuing my series of doing season record prediction videos for each NFL team. My last video was of the Carolina Panthers, and this one is of the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears were in the playoffs last season and lost in their first game to the New Orleans Saints. And during the offseason, they made a huge trade in the draft, getting Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields. The offseason for the Bears, in my opinion, really they got some nice players on offense. Some of the guys they got, like I mentioned, Justin Fields, they traded up to get with him with the New York Giants. They also signed quarterback Andy Dalton, which to me, I think Andy Dalton is a great guy that Justin Fields can learn from. Andy Dalton could be that mentor guy, leadership to really, show Justin Fields what to do around the NFL. Andy Dalton's been a guy who's been in the league for about a decade now. So I think both, that signing and that draft pick with Fields is fantastic. And they also signed wide receiver Marquise Goodwin. And I know Marquise Goodwin isn't great, but I actually like this signing quite a bit because, the Bears just recently traded Anthony Miller. They did franchise tag Allen Robinson. Darnell Mooney, lots of people aren't high on him. But, the depth at wide receiver for the Bears is not something that's great. So I think getting Marquise Goodwin in the offseason is not bad at all. And their departures, you really look at it, the only departure for the Chicago Bears that I think will have a toll on their season is corner Kyle Fuller. Aside from that, I don't think they lost anybody significant on their team. I'm very interested to see how this Bears team plays throughout this season. We'll go ahead, week one here. They take on the LA Rams. The LA Rams, to me, are a top 3 team in the NFL, right up there with the Buccaneers and the Browns. And I just do not see the Bears winning this game, whether it's Justin Fields starting, Andy Dalton, or even Nick Foles. I think there's about a 1% chance the Bears can pull off an upset victory here over the Rams. And something else to point out, I think it's very interesting to see when Justin Fields will start his first NFL game. I personally don't think it should be until about a week 5, week 6, something like that, because I think Justin Fields needs to learn some from Dalton or Nick Foles, maybe sit a few games, and then maybe take over the starting quarterback for the Bears. Week 2, they host the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a revenge game for Andy Dalton against Cincinnati. And, Cincinnati's offense is way more talented than people give them credit for. Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, who's arguably the most underrated receiver in the NFL, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. And their offense line's very much improved. The Bears losing here in week 2 as well. I just mentioned the Rams are a top 3 team, and I said the Buccaneers and the Browns are the other 2 teams. Week 3, they take on the Browns in Cleveland. That's going to be a long game, in my opinion. Do not see the Bears winning this game, so that's already 0-3 on the year. Week 4, they host rival the Detroit Lions, a divisional rival. I have them losing this game. I wouldn't be surprised if they won, but to me, the Lions don't have a good roster. I think they have a top 5 worst roster in the NFL. But you really look at the Lions' offensive line and some of their nice players on defense. I think they have a better roster than people give them credit for. They have Jared Goff, who's a far worse than, former starting quarterback Matthew Stafford. I think right now Jared Goff is better than Andy Dalton or Justin Fields. And I think the Lions will get an upset victory here against the Bears in week 4. Week 5, they go to Vegas to take on the Raiders. This is another one of those games where I could see them winning, but I just do not have them winning here. This is kind of a toss-up. I think the Raiders are the definition of average. They're always that, 8-8 team, 7-9, that type of deal. And I think right here, week 5 is where we might see Justin Fields' first starting game in the NFL. I really think this is the game where he should start. Week 4 or week 5. If you start him week 1, I do not think that's a good idea at all. But with the loss here, they are 0-5 in the year. Week 6, they host the Packers. On the news of Aaron Rodgers returning to Green Bay this season, they're not going to beat the Packers with Rodgers, so that's 0-6. They take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. So throughout the first 7 games of the season, in my opinion, they already played the 3 best teams in the NFL, which is very, very difficult, And something to point out, all 3 of those games are away. If they win any of those games, to me, that's incredibly impressive. But I did not see them winning any of those games here, so that makes it 0-7. Week 8, they host the San Francisco 49ers, and I think the 49ers are one of the better teams in the NFL as well. If it wasn't for injuries last season, they definitely would have been a playoff team. And, how people talk about when will Justin Fields start, I think a very intriguing question is when will Trey Lance start for San Francisco? I think whether it's Garoppolo or Trey Lance starting here in Week 8, I still see the 49ers beating the Bears here to make the Bears record 0-8. Week 9, they head to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. And this is where I actually have their first one in the season and a major, major upset. To me, this is not a huge upset compared to other people because I think the Steelers are not going to be nearly as good as what people think. I think they're going to be last in their own division. I think they'll have 6 or 7 wins. And I think the Bears, after Fields gets 4 or 5 starts, then I think, the Bears will start playing much better once Fields gets more comfortable on the field. The NFL game compared to the college, completely different. And I have the Bears winning their first game here in the Monday Night Football game against the Steelers to go get their first one of the season to go to 1-8 on the year. Week 10 is their bye week. So heading into their bye week, they are 1-8. Not what you're really looking for at all. Not what you want to see if you're a Bears fan. Week 11, they take on the Baltimore Ravens. And, the Ravens, what they're going to do. They're going to run the ball down your throat the whole entire game. But they still manage to do it successfully, and that's how they find ways to win week in and week out. So we have the Bears losing here to go to 1-9 on the season. Week 12, they head to Detroit to take on the Lions, and I have them getting their second win of the year, going to 2-9 on the year. So I have them splitting the series with the Detroit Lions, but I would not be surprised if they would sweep Detroit this season. I talked about them getting an upset victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers. I had them getting another upset victory here in Week 13 at home against the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are one of those teams who, they have high expectations this season, but it seems like just the past couple of years, there's games where they shouldn't lose, but they do. And I think this could be one of those situations for Arizona. So I have the Bears winning this one. And I think a big factor in this is in Chicago. If this was in Arizona, I would probably have the Cardinals winning this one. Make their record to go 3-9 on the year. Week 14, they go to Green Bay to take on the Green Bay Packers. I do not see them winning in Lambeau Field. That is very, very difficult to do. That makes them go to 3-10 on the year. Week 15, they host the Minnesota Vikings. I have them losing here to make their record to go to 3-11. And to me, the Vikings are one of the most interesting teams heading into the year. The Vikings and the Panthers, in my opinion, are the 2 most underrated teams heading into the 2021 season. I honestly do not think it'd be crazy to say if the Vikings would end up winning the NFC North. That's how much I like them this much. But I think this will be a very difficult game here for the Bears to take on the Vikings, despite it being in Chicago. Week 16, I have another upset victory for the Chicago Bears. That is beating the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. We have seen this time and time again. The last 4 or 5 games of the season, the Seattle Seahawks absolutely blow it. It seems like, the Seahawks, they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. And then, it just gets really, really bad the last 4 or 5 games. We definitely saw that, the second part of the season last year. The first half of the year, Russell Wilson was the MVP candidate and the Seahawks were a Super Bowl contender. The second half, they absolutely sucked and lost to a quarterback against the Rams, who that was his first ever NFL start. So I like this upset here against the Seahawks. This is one of the games, though, it could happen, and I honestly think it might, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Bears would end up losing. Week 17, they get another one, their first back-to-back win of the season, a home victory against the New York Giants. This is another one of those games I think they can win, would not be surprised at all. But if they lost, I wouldn't be surprised either. So 5-11 on the season, and getting 2 quality wins against some 2 decent teams like the Seahawks and the Giants. Especially towards the end of the season, is definitely what you want to see for the Bears with a starting quarterback like Justin Fields, who's a rookie. And to close out the season, they go on the road to take on the Minnesota Vikings. I have them losing this game, and the Vikings, to me, I really like them a lot, and especially this being in Minnesota. This was in Chicago. I think it could be a little bit different, but being in Minnesota, and this is probably going to be a situation where the Vikings have to win to get in the playoffs. I think the Bears will end up losing this game. So my record prediction for the Bears is 5-12. And, I know some people think that might be a little bit low, but if you actually look at it, I had them start off the season 0-8. So, they finished the season very, very good. They finished the season off 5-4. And they had some quality wins against teams like the Steelers, the Seahawks, and the Giants. And this is the type of situation, they won their last 2 of the last 3 games. That's a great way to end the year, especially with Justin Fields. More than likely, Andy Dalton's not going to be in the team next season. Then you get some pieces. Who knows? The Bears could maybe be a playoff team next year. But my ceiling for the Chicago Bears is 9-8. I know I'm kind of critical and kind of harsh on the Bears this season, because lots of these games, I think they could possibly win. But it was kind of similar to last year. Lots of the games last year, their defense won them their games. And it's kind of hard to pick the Bears winning a ton of games, especially with a guy like Justin Fields, who's never played an NFL snap. But their ceiling for them is 9-8, and their floor for them is 3-13. Even if they're not good this season, I still think they're going to win at least 3 games. And once again, my record prediction for them is 5-12. Thank you all so much for listening. If you would like to